What's up, guys? It's the Game Bro coming back to you. Another F1 review. Sorry it's a couple days late. Having any time alone is a fucking rarity to record. So hope everyone had a good summer break. It was way too long not to see cars on track after the clustered 2020 season seemed like non-stop action. So let's get into it. Coming into the Belgian Grand Prix, Mercedes looked to have the upper hand after a bad few races for Max and Red Bull team, as well as having to switch to each car's third power unit facing probable grid penalties later on after the events of Hungary as well as Ferrari. Red Bull seemed to have lost their advantage in straight-line performance to Mercedes, but it's not to be determined if it was from a technical directive, Honda reliability concerns, or just downright aero setup. We're about halfway or more into the season, with the Japanese Grand Prix also being cancelled, and I'm sure more to be and others announced in place of them. So let's jump into the event, starting with FP1, as rain was in the forecast nearly the whole weekend. The Spa-Francorchamps circuit, fuck that one up, is the longest on the F1 calendar and nestled in the Ardennes Forest, and is no stranger to legendary wet weather races, fantastic battles, and also first corner carnage. See the 98 race. Shaking the rust off with FP1, the slippery surface saw a few spins, including the oldest driver on the grid. Later on, Kimi would put it in the pit wall on pit entry with minor damage. Mercedes and Red Bull split their cars on wing setups for either higher downforce or less drag. Bottas ended the session a tenth and a half up on Verstappen and half a second up on an impressive Gasly in third. Ferrari surprising in fourth and fifth, with Hamilton being all the way down in 18th as his only flying lap was interrupted. FP2 started hours later, with a new view from the eyes of old man Fred, just showing how intense the ride of a modern F1 car is, hopefully putting to rest how they're not like they used to be, and anyone could drive them. A few spins on the shockingly dry surface saw Charles Leclerc lose it on the exit of 6, causing the need for a chassis change after the impact. After the red flag, 10 minutes were left for one last run. Verstappen lost control out of turn 7 and hit the barriers enough not to continue on, but was still in the session with P1, as well as Bottas and Hamilton close behind on the medium compounds. Both Alpines and Aston Martins inside the top 10 impressing again. It's Saturday now, and a wet FP3 ahead of qualifying would let them get a feel of what's to come later. Kimi only got 3 laps of running after an apparent brake failure and wouldn't return. Fastest laps were set early on with the intermediates, as heavy rain later forced the wets to be used. Verstappen again P1 with Sergio a second back and Hamilton right on his tail in third, leading into quali in just a few hours. Ferrari struggling with the colder weather, and Charles' spare chassis saw them off the pace again. It's qualifying time. Q1 starts with inters on and only just under 2-minute laps, with no real surprises with the eliminated 5. Q2 saw both Ferraris miss out, as well as Alonso not able to improve, and Latifi again showing the improving Williams has something for the midfield. Q3 started with horrible conditions, and right off saw Lando Norris have a heavy crash going up Eau Rouge into Rodillion, only resulting in a 5-place grid drop from a gearbox change. After the red flag period ended, the guys went out on inters with enough fuel to do 2 flyers and a recharge lap, with Hamilton holding the provisional pole after the first lap. To everyone's shock, George Russell put in one of the bravest wet weather laps, putting it on pole only to be knocked off by Max the last second with a killer 1:59.765, but still a front row start for the Williams of Russell, followed by Hamilton, Ricciardo, Vettel, Gasly, Perez, Bottas, Ocon, and Norris. 5-place grid penalties for Bottas, Stroll, and Norris would bump many of the runners up the grid for the start of the race, which would prove to be interesting the next day. So it's race day. It's Sunday now, and absolute pissing it. On his way to the grid, Sergio Perez crashed through the chicane into the barriers, destroying his right front, then declaring themselves out of the race. After a few 5-minute delays, the race would questionably start or not start behind the safety car from the formation lap, causing massive confusion if the race started, then coming back into the pits after only completing 1 full lap. The visibility just too much to go racing. After 3 hours of listening to Crofty and Brundle attempt to keep you entertained with weather updates every 5 minutes, the guys, including the fixed car of Sergio Perez, took to the track, but only to finish the 2 laps for classification and half points, the weather having been worse than when it should have started. Max gets the win, with Russell getting his first podium in second and Hamilton third. With grid drops and the Perez crash, both the Ferraris and Latifi were moved up into the points, so not a total loss here. The podium wasn't Indy 05, but a deserved one after a long weekend that all endured. With half points awarded, Hamilton's lead is now only 3 points on Max going into his real home race in the Netherlands this week. The rest of the standings stay the same, really, with constructors now seeing only Merc up by 7 over Red Bull and McLaren up by 3 over Ferrari. The irrelevant fastest lap was held by Nikita Mazepin. Way to go. So what do I think of all this bullshit? Well, the Schumacher trailer dropped 30 years after his debut, And the running of his legendary Jordan with Mick and Caroon kind of brought a tear to everyone's eye. That was a good thing to show. George Russell and the improving Williams. Impressive drive. Just showing the bravery of how far he was willing to go in qualifying. You know, that car in the dry would have been fucking terrible. But in the wet, it was just like the Toro Rosso at Italy in '08. The non-existent Bottas. I know he was fast in the FP1, but still, just, I think his body language and George's body language kind of tell the tale of what's going to happen in the coming weeks or the end of the season when we're all given the announcement. Plus the idea of Kimi retiring and him going to Alpha. What about Callum Ilott, or Mick going to Alpha would be good. Perez and Alonso get contract extensions for 22. Seeing Alonso's helmet cam, I don't know why we haven't gotten that sooner and just blur out the stuff on the steering wheel. That view just showed, how awesome it is in a modern F1 car. After hearing everyone saying, oh, they're so soft on the onboard cameras compared to the old Senna footage at Monaco, but this kind of gives you a feeling, hey, they're still that fucking brutal. With the Japanese Grand Prix and potentially others to be canceled, the idea of the Qatar calendar date would be pretty cool, though I don't really see that much more of a train and no passing. But hey, racing's racing. The confusion of the start, race clock, and the Perez being allowed back in kind of just showed that there will always be gray areas in the rule books or how things are supposed to go during the weekend. I think after seeing the crashes in the W Series or just Norris on Saturday, the right thing to do is to not race on Sunday. I know the whole half-point thing was like, oh, there's money, but you know what? These guys endured it. There was damages. I think half points were well-deserved, even if it was only the couple laps. So going into the rest of the season, it seems to swing back towards Red Bull as they appeared to have the advantage this weekend, showing with the low downforce setups it looked at, Red Bull could still have that straight line speed. I think a lot of it was just setups. What to expect in the Netherlands, I hate that fucking track, so I just hope for a good race. Max's fans are going to be chanting Super Max, but I don't think Hamilton's going to like going to there. So yeah, if you like this, give me a like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out my reviews on my channel as well if you're into that, like my Creed videos if you're into really dark stuff. And I'll see you guys next week for the Netherlands review. Hope you enjoy, have a great week wherever you are in the world, and good night.